Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. I'll reintroduce my guests to you. To my immediate right is former legislator and lawyer Priscilla Nyokabi. Next to her is Edward Kisiangani, who is our resident political analyst. To my left is George Morara. He's the vice chair of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which is a state-run rights body. And next to him is Charles Opio. He's a futurist and a friend of the show. And you're all welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, it was a day of reconciliation, hugs, and, you know, all that good stuff when President Kenyatta, if you like, led the charges for Team Kenya by calling on leaders to follow his example and literally putting them on the spot. And you could see the shock on their faces at the National Prayer Breakfast as he had them come on stage and follow his example. Listen.
What Mandela said when he came from prison after 27 years, South Africa had been under apartheid, and the people of South Africa suffered some of the greatest injustice in the world. And when he came out, he decided to shake hands with de Klerk, who represented the system that had put him in jail for 27 years.
Raila mentioned that if de Klerk and Mandela could shake hands, who are we? I know he was referring to the fact, if the comparison is looked at, I am Mandela and he was de Klerk. God bless you.
Thank you.
And the audience there was very happy to see the Deputy President and the former Prime Minister hug. Of course, the two have been having a kind of scuffle that's been playing out quite publicly. Priscilla, let's start with you. What do you think of what happened today?
I think a good day, a happy day, two Mandelas. I don't see any de Klerk in the in the story.
Right.
A very, very good day and a happy day. And I like that it's come early on in the term, just before the end of the first year after the election. Gives us a chance for years of work, or at least 3 years of work, and then we can go back to electioneering. So it's a really good day, a happy day. And I hope that the handshake cascades. Many of the counties are still hurting. We saw many bitter rivals in the governorship, many bitter rivals in the Senate seats. So I think the handshake now, every governor should repeat it, hold a national or a county prayer breakfast and shake hands with everybody else down there. But then it's not just handshake, it's not just hug shake. Now we're even in hugs. It is a lot more about the work. What can we do about healthcare? What can we do about corruption? What can we do about roads? That for me is the excitement. So I'm hoping that we don't spend the whole year also just discussing the handshake.
Yes.
That after today, we get on to the real business of building the country.
All right, George.
Well, let me just agree with what Priscilla has said by calling it also a day of momentous happenings. And for me, the issue and the question then is how do we sustain this? For me, the most quotable quote that came from today's prayer breakfast meeting was the one from the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, who urged that hug, that handshake to extend to every corner of this country because people are hurting. I can tell you, Anne, and Priscilla spoken about the political process, but from where we sit as a commission, we know the ordinary Kenyans who bore the brunt, especially of the latest election cycle, and those ones also need spaces to heal, they need spaces to hug, they need spaces to talk. They just need to also have an opportunity to break out in laughter in a spirit of reconciliation after having been told exactly what happened.
And let's talk about those spaces. And Charles, I must confess that I feel a sense of pride seeing this, because you were one, I mean, I didn't know you from Adam, really, but, you know, at the height of the election crisis that we had last year, at some point, we made the decision as a show, basically to just stop bringing politicians on board, stop looking for experts, and to bring ordinary Kenyans into studio to talk about, you know, the state of their nation and what they wanted for the republic. And you were one of those very brave Kenyans who just showed up. It's not that we knew you or anything, but you came on the program and you had such passionate views. And as George talks about, you know, the rest of the country, you know, still limping, really. It's one thing to see the leaders do that, but, you know, on a one-to-one level, there's still some of those sores. So what's your perspective on how Kenyans can own a handshake that really is about them and build those bridges themselves?
Well, I guess going back to that same occasion that we had here, we had quite a wide array of people. And there was a consensus. You know, it was really funny that we kind of all were saying the same thing from different perspectives. We're all basically saying certain things need to stop, certain things need to end, we need to get away from these differences. And I remember one of the major discussions that came out of that was that it's time that the president and former prime minister got into a room on their own and had a discussion minus everybody. Remember, that was the thing we kept pushing for. We kept saying, it's time, like we've forgotten politics, they forget politics. And they think about a nation. But now I think it needs to go like Honorable Priscilla has said. I think as Kenyans now, we have to literally stop second-guessing the handshake and start implementing relationships. See, if we borrow from South Africa, we'll see one of the weaknesses that it didn't cascade. There's a level of xenophobia. There's a level of tribalism that they didn't quite deal with. Even with their commissions, it never actually became a reality on the ground. And I think it's time to stop looking at the principles and start being that generation that says, you know what, we need to demystify. And I think, for me, the big charge is for our tribe mongers, because we have them, who built a whole lie to a generation about who the others were. You know, it's time, this should be more than the principal speaking. There's people who characterized both leaders different during the electioneering period and created for the person in the village an image of who these people are supposed to be. And it's time those people went back and corrected that also.
Right.
So it's not just so much about the two principals can hold peace rallies, but they can't really get to the conversations on the ground. Yeah. And it's time, yes, it's good for the county leaders to do it, but I think it's time individuals did it.
Prof, let me come to you, and I wonder if we can just get the pictures of Opinion Court last year up on your screen for you to see, and you may remember those moments when we had everyday Kenyans, Prof, here seated instead of experts telling us what they thought about the Republic. And if you could pick up from what Charles has said in terms of how do we now start that one-to-one conversation? How do Kenyans own this process? Are we going to sit back and wait again for our political leaders to call for some sort of national conference, you know, where we all show up at Bomas and talk? Or how can we just get talking one-on-one about the real things?
I think we should start straight away, because from what we have done in the past, and we have come to the conclusion that there are a lot of things that unite us than those that actually divide us. We are neighbors, we are friends, we are relatives. This binary mapping of our society into we against the other is not only evil, it is diabolical. Because it doesn't start even to represent the truth. So we need to start. These guys have given an example. And we discussed a few weeks ago when the handshake started, probably a month ago, and then we said we shall be seeing the signals of what this handshake means to us as citizens. And now we have started seeing what the handshake means. It appears now the handshake has started getting action-oriented. One of the things that causes us to fight is people stealing public resources and thinking that those resources belong to them. The president has said this is not about a tribe. This is about individuals who just have bad manners and they enjoy stealing. And you know, as we go towards 2022, now that there is a centralized command fighting against corruption, a lot of casualties, including those who attended Safari Park today, will be witnessed very soon on both sides of the political divide. Some careers will go with this centralized command. We want this to be extended to other sectors of life, those who just preach tribal animosity. We saw it during the elections. I'm proud to have been part of the team in this opinion court, which spoke to the president directly, asking the president to intervene and talk. There were very many people within the president's camp who didn't want it. But we still had others in the Raila camp who said, now we don't want to talk. Even they ended up talking about NRM and so on. I'm happy that they have retracted their steps and they are now saying, we want one nation. So for us as individuals, we must pick from there. At our own level, how many injustices are we meting out on our neighbors, on our friends? How many stereotypes have we pronounced against the people who we live with, we work with in an office? It is our personal responsibility and a civic duty as citizens of this country to look back and say we have been wrong. And it's not just enough to go and tell them, look, we have been wrong and whatever we said, forgive us. We want to go and visit our enemies, quote unquote, those we thought were enemies. Let's go and say, tomorrow morning, we want to take tea with you. When we arrive there, we just sit, and then they ask, anything we can do? We say, we want a cup of tea or coffee. Now, as we sip the first one, second one, third one, we say, you know, I've come to tell you that I thought you are a devil, but I now realize that you are a good human being, and we can work together. I had told my son that you people are devils. I had told my daughter, you people are devils. You are not devils. Forgive me for thinking like that. You probably didn't know I think you are a bad person. So that is what our responsibility as citizens are. And I think in our little way, especially in the media, like the one we have been honored actually, privileged to serve. We have spoken to our leadership, and I want to thank His Excellency the President. He has listened. We have addressed him, sometimes probably not using good language. He should also forgive us for bothering him so much. But we have done it, and the Prime Minister and his team, is good they have come together. Kalonzo Musyoka, I want to thank him, because what has happened is Kalonzo Musyoka even didn't like the handshake. But I think after looking at it, he has come out and he seems to say, this is the right way to go. Honorable William Ruto, he looked to be doubting, and I think even the president took him by surprise. He might not have believed in it, but the fact that he was there and heeded the president's call to come to the stage and embrace his friends and also apologize, that is good for our country. I think it was
definitely, and I think a lot of people, you know, when you heard that applause between when the two, the deputy president and the former prime minister shook hands, I think there was quite an acknowledgement on the part that that it took a lot more for the deputy president to do that. There was the appearance of that, and that it was a big moment for him, perhaps. Yes. Did anyone else get that sort of sense that, you know, he really... I mean, he was on the spot, and you know, when the time came,
but I think it's also so much the Kenyan problem. It isn't so much that he never supported the handshake. It's also so much that we want some people to support the handshake, and we want others to support the handshake. Yes, we want. I mean, we are so used to having two camps that even when we don't have them, we create them. But I like that now we don't have to create camps anymore. Both him and Kalonzo Musyoka, who were thought, Kalonzo was thought to have opposed the handshake from his side of NASA, and the deputy president from the side of Jubilee.
The only difference is the deputy president was
I like that today. Yes, but I like that today. Now there is no second guessing.
No second
we
guessing,
could try maybe with Weta and Musalia, who are not there, but we don't have to second guess people. And I like this situation, because what has happened to Kenya is our politics is so easy and so bad. Because all you have to do, I am from Central, for example, all I have to do is support Uhuru Kenyatta. I don't have to have solutions on health. I don't need to have solutions on coffee. I don't need to have solutions on youth employment. I don't even need to speak about them. All I need to say is that Raila is a bad man, Uhuru is a good man, and as many as are supporting Uhuru come to this side, as many are supporting. It doesn't matter what devolution, you know, is doing to our country, what's the fight against corruption. And you know, in our fight against corruption, although what the DPP is doing is right, right? We have such permissive systems. And I'm hoping that this handshake allows us now, not just to deal with those that have taken the money, but how do we protect what is still in the kitty? And I'm big on healthcare, for example. Let me just give you this quickly, because I may not get back to it. We have money for health, for example, the level 5 hospitals, where the money doesn't get sent to the hospital, it gets sent to county government. And then later on we worry about whether the money went to hospital or didn't go to the hospital. But why send it to the why send it to the county government in the first place? Why not send it straight up to the hospital? Why not send the money straight up to the level 5 hospital? So if we find that we have weaknesses of law, for example, that the finance minister doesn't have an enabling provision for him to send the money, I hope that now with this handshake, we can begin to deal with those systematic issues. We can begin to deal with issues of deterrence. We can begin to deal with access to information. For as long as citizens don't know that they have this amount of money, they won't take part in the corruption. So let's not second guess. Now at least the politics is going to go, you know, a notch lower. I hope we don't have new people. I hope the referendum debate is no longer on the table.
But let me ask you this, Priscilla and George, if I would, because, and I hear you, you know, the handshake has set the platform for meaningful work to begin.
That's true.
Having said that, there are those who are still on the fence about it. There are many who still feel, you know what, this is PR-ish in a sense, that we're going to be back at the same thing in 2022. Is there a way, and you've talked about, you know, no need for the referendum, but I wonder whether you think in the broader sense of protecting the country, reconciling the country, if there is room for a legal framework for that can insulate the handshake beyond the goodwill of politicians to perhaps something more tangible in law? Or do you think as we are fine?
No, we are not fine actually, and for me my biggest worry is what happened between the handshake and the handshake now, that interlude. And as my fellow panelists have said, we had a lot of divergent voices and views about what the handshake was all about. Others tied it to 2022. They said it's about 2022. That was Ruto's camp versus Raila's camp. Even when Raila tried to say it's not about 2022, then he said it's about 2022. So for me, I hope that the task force that has been gazetted today and given that 1 year period doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do is to take that handshake and the hug and anchor it within our structures and institutions that we've created over time. And this gives us a golden opportunity, for example, to start talking and thinking seriously about the recommendations of the TJRC report. Because that report contains the pain of Kenyans, the political level, the social level, the economic level. So let's not reinvent the wheel. And I'm glad there are movements towards that. Even the establishment of the 10 billion fund, where we are working with other stakeholders to ensure that there's a framework for reparation of the victims of historical injustice. Because what Prof said, and Priscilla and the rest of the panelists, our problems tend to be really tied to politics. Politics is almost like a cookie cutter approach. You know the outcome already. Let's look at what the TJRC report told us. Let's look at what our constitution tells us to do, and maybe refer to the other books, also the other cardinal books, the Quran, the Bible. But for me, the constitution, the TJRC, starts giving us a framework. There's already
provisions for that.
Absolutely.
Legal provisions.
I'm of the same view. We don't really need to change the law only to anchor this process. This is different from the National Accord. Remember the one that we had 2007, 2008? This is different. This is within the constitutional framework. It is, I mean, I think you could say largely the country was divided into two. There are those who supported Uhuru and Ruto, the president and the deputy president, and those who supported Raila Odinga. So what we need now is not another new set of laws. I've always felt that there might be a need to look at this opposition clause, that the leader of the opposition, for example, Raila Odinga, now should not be outside the chambers of discussion or the chambers of lawmaking. There might be reason, but you don't need to change the constitution. You don't need to have a referendum on that. There could be, you know, just some small clauses in the constitution, like what we are doing with the 2/3, asking that only Article 97 and 98 are amended to allow more women. You could open up 98 in the Senate to just create a position of the opposition leader. But that's only if it's very necessary. Otherwise, as it is right now, with the goodwill that they both have, it is we have a good framework to continue on the journey of Big Four,
yes,
on the journey of the economic expansion. Our economy is not, you know, doing as much. Because if we start going into legal reform takes a lot of time, as you know, and legal reform is itself adversarial. Some people are for it and some people are against it.
That's a good point. You know, whilst the president has been, you know, lauded for today's events and the leadership that he showed in that respect, it does appear that we're seeing a different style and approach from the man. And just yesterday he was telling the deputy president off. Listen.
Hii kijana anaitwa Ruto, unajua kila weekend anatanga kila pahali. Atakuwa anapitia hizi machorochoro. Akiona kuna kitu inaenda kona mumwambie. Si namna hiyo? Si namna hiyo? Tuhakikishe kazi ya wananchi imefanyika. Tumekubaliana? Ni wangapi wamesema tuache siasa tuende kazi? Tuende kazi.
Obviously, his message being pretty clear and in reference to what many have seen as politicking by the deputy president through his weekend functions. Thoughts? What do you think, Charles? Was it needed scolding?
To play the devil's advocate and to give the president some leeway, in the sense that if you're trying to do this thing that's been a headache for generations, and you've made this agreement between principals, but there seems to be some insubordination, there could be a level of frustration that comes with that. And with that frustration, yes, there can be an unguarded moment where your natural feelings show up. But let's look at what's behind the statement. What's behind the statement is that, look guys, I've put something in a particular direction. Let's all line up with it. At this point in time, let's not focus on the future. Let's focus on the issues here. And I think it's here that we had that discussion that when the president does begin to move in the next direction, it should not be complicated. He should speak a language that the people will understand with his programs, with his structures and everything. And having said that, the reality has been that if we've watched news recently, when we say people have been second-guessing the handshake, we could take off on who. You understand? It wasn't a mystery on who's second-guessing. So coming out from that point was allowing him, and I think we need to accept a candid president as opposed to a political one.
Did you say a candid president?
A candid president.
Okay.
Who can come out and say, guys, I really mean this. This is where I'd like to go, and I don't like this other stuff that's going on.
All right, and he wasn't just candid on that, if I was to borrow the word. He also was not going to sit back and listen to Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko quietly. Watch.
Mambo ya Muguna isikutishe. Hiyo loyalty, your excellency, hiyo isikutishe.
Mheshimiwa Sonko amesema hapa ati mimi nisiogope, nisitishwe, sijui Miguna. Mimi nataka niwaambie na niwaambie hata nyinyi. Mimi naheshimu kila Mkenya, lakini sitishwi na mtu hata yeyote. Watu waelewe vizuri. Heshima sio utumwa jameni. Au ni namna gani? Mtu asifikiria ya kwamba mimi ni mtu ya kutishatishwa huko. Kama ni vitisho, tutaona vitisho itazidi upande ya nani.
Friend. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Uhuru's first term was very interesting. It was rather guarded. And we predicted on this show that Uhuru will not be the same person that we have had 2013, 2017. So this is the really Uhuru. And by telling the two gentlemen, first Deputy President, he's telling Deputy President that I'm the Commander-in-Chief. That's what he has told him. And I give direction. He's also telling the Deputy President, people voted for the President. Wow. My legitimacy is in the people. They voted for Uhuru Kenyatta, candidate Uhuru Kenyatta.
No lame duck president here.
So he has told him, you either shape up or shape out. That is the point. And if you believe in my values, you cannot be undermining them. So this is the candidness that Charles is talking about. our president is saying he will not tolerate anybody who comes between him and peace. So he has set the agenda and everybody is expected to follow suit. For Songo, he's also telling him the same thing. Songo cannot pretend to be, you know, Songo has done a few things in the past, and sometimes the president has kept quiet. You remember one time when he was trying to call people on a site, a construction site,
right.
And then he's trying to call the president.
And put him on speakerphone.
Yes, and putting the president on, and then we complained on this show again.
Actually,
and I was one of the people who said that that is disrespectful of the head of state. Now he has again said, you know, he's trying to pamper the president, tell him, you know, somebody, anakutisha. The president is telling him, I'm the commander-in-chief. So, if I'm the one being T-shirt, if I can use the...
Go ahead, conjugate that, yes, no problem.
If I'm the one being T-shirt in this country, then there is no country. So he's also telling him that you do not have the capacity, you don't have to tell me that. I cannot be threatened by anybody else. So you do your work as governor, but don't come to appear like you are giving me, patronizing me and giving me cheap protection. I don't need this protection.
Right.
Now, the main thing when the head of state is there, he's probably saying this: I'll set the agenda for this country, and I will have a say on who becomes the president, because I don't want my legitimacy, my legacy to be destroyed by another person who opposes all I've built for the next 5 years. So those who want to be part of me and my dream will support me. If you don't support me by 2022, you are gone. So he has read a riot act to his team, and he's saying you either support me or you don't. Marry that with what Raila Odinga reminded the deputy president one time, that you might need me.
But I don't want to go down that line. Yes, guys, I'm being counted down.
There's a reason why I've raised that, and you should just give me a second. The reason is that while we were discussing this handshake, one of the things that came up was this, that there is something this gentleman, the two gentlemen, our president and our former prime minister, discussed and announced they discussed. But how much else did they not tell us? Now, with these statements, you can understand there is a whole lot of information we don't have. So really, it's a good thing. I think for me, the president has done very well. Actually, he surprised me by the boldness he has had. Maybe some of the fellows who have been making mistakes in this country have been looking at his kind, you know, voice, and they think that it's a useless thing. So he has started reading that. He will be even tougher in the next 2 years, by 2020.
Prof, because now you've left everybody else just a minute, but making very sound points, I might add. If we were to take everything that we have seen from those clips, a different style of leading by President Kenyatta and applied to what we're seeing in the war on corruption, do you think this might be it? This might be the time when Kenya actually has a fighting chance against this monster? And Prof, last week you told the president that he's alone in this fight. I mean, we've heard a lot of good talk from, you know, the Chief Justice and many other leaders rallying around it and saying we support you now, Mr. President. But if we were to assume that, you know, when it comes down to it, that he is on his own on this, how should that inform the way in which he leads, or if you like, or takes charge of the fight against corruption? As your final comments, perhaps we can start on that end.
Well, I think sometimes the quickest way to see something is to watch body language. If you watch the body language of the people around him, you better realize he's very serious. It's very easy. Just look around. As a futurist, I study trends. And when you begin to see all the vocal arrogance is dying in the periphery, when you begin to see everybody trying to change color, it tells you in the background something is going on that when people come into the public, they cannot expose anymore. So I can tell you for a fact, there's a concept we call the margin of error, you know, where you say if you go 2 degrees off, then after so many miles, you're far off. So we're in an autocorrection. So what's basically happening, a pilot will tell you that when you autocorrect by 2 degrees, you autocorrect a lot. So people are talking about little fish. You know, that autocorrection is going to be huge. Because you start there and it just has to expand. And before long, we'll be dealing with massive issues.
All right. How then should he lead differently?
I think for me, and if you listen to what people are saying, even in the newspapers and all this, it took a directive from the president himself for us to start seeing action. We were told that the DPP got the signal. If we were to use Malema's word, the signal came from the president. The DPP
from
took
Papa
up.
this time, I guess. Right?
It wasn't Mama, it was Baba gave us the signal. So it came from State House.
Right.
And we've actually even listened to the DPP say that he has the full support of the president. The tone at the top is very useful. And the president is setting that tone at the top. And like he said today, the people who commit acts of corruption may come from ethnic communities or tribes, but they're individuals. They're not whole communities. And that should be what's driving this agenda. So I think the tone at the top is correct, and let's see this country moving in the right direction. Don't call corruption a monster, by the way. I don't like it calling it.
What do you think it is?
It is a crime.
A monstrous one.
No, it's a crime.
I hold my phone.
No, it's a crime.
Priscilla.
Thank you so much. I think that it is right that the president is leading this fight from the front. But leadership usually means there are people behind you. So if you walk too far and you leave everybody else, then you're taking a walk. That's what they say. So I'm hoping that he spends time on the institutions. I like that the DPP is getting stronger. It's not very good that the ESCC is nowhere in this fight. I think they should take the lesson that a lot of the investigation has had to be done in other offices. So the president should lead the fight from the front. We've seen other presidents, Kagame, Rwanda, and many other countries where corruption is being fought. Our number on the international scale needs to improve. That fight is his. But then he should carry all the institutions, allow the judiciary to do its work. Where changes of law need to be done, for example, the bail, we need to remove bail on corruption so that there's a little bit more pain for people who are taking public money. So where those laws need to be changed, then Parliament will come in. So it's the president, yes, but also the institutions and everybody else. The only small point I want to make about the deputy president and moving around the country, especially because I have been in some of those sessions, it isn't just that he moves around. When he moves around with development, I think that's fine too. When he's opening a road or he's commissioning a school, or I mean, it isn't that he's just, you know, tanga-tangaring. That's also not very true. It's also that even if he's tanga-tangaring with development, which we all need, and you remember Kenyans are like the Israelites. We want a king who we see. We want a king who we feel. We want the king to come. We all ask him. I know that MPs queue in his office to ask him to visit the areas. The only thing we want to see now is that movement, but for development, not movement for politics.
Prof, you have 30 seconds, strictly.
Those who thought that the Constitution does not empower the presidency now can see what this Constitution is. Under Article 132, we have enormous executive powers given to the president. The president's voice can change Kenya. His leadership can change Kenya. The last few moments he decided to do, a few months he decided to do things the way he's doing. You have seen it's going to be massive. And for me, Kenya, for a long time now, Kenya has started getting it right. President Kenyatta, keep up.
I think he's on Big 5.
That's our time. Thank you for watching, and my thanks to our guests. Good night. Happy Madaraka Day. Bye-bye.
Happy Madaraka Day.
Happy Madaraka Day.